So, good morning, students. I welcome you back to this lecture series on rhetoric. This is supposed to be the third class on rhetoric, on figures of speech. I think you must have gone through the other two videos on figures of speech that were posted earlier. So, this is supposed to be the third class on figures of speech. So, again, today we'll be dealing with 5 figures of speech. We have completed 10. So, with this 5 today, we'll be completing 15 figures of speech. Okay? So, without much ado, we start our class for today. The first figure of speech that we will be dealing today is allusion. The first figure of speech that we will be dealing today is allusion. A double L U S I O N, allusion. Now let us first write down the definition of what allusion is. And as is the tradition that we follow, we will give you examples and then we'll try to understand how that particular sentence is an example of allusion. So let us first write down the definition of allusion. Okay? Write it down. Allusion is a word. Allusion, A double L U S I O N. Allusion is a word or expression. Allusion is a word or expression used to recall, R E C A L L, used to recall, to one's mind, used to recall, to one's ONE apostrophe S, one's mind, MIND, some notable character, comma, memorable event, comma, legend, LEGEND, comma, writing, 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 or saying of the past, or saying, SAYING, saying of the past, PAST. So this is the definition of allusion, and I am quite hopeful that after going through this definition, you haven't understood what allusion is. So let me give you an example to elaborate what allusion is all about. If you remember, while reading To His Coy Mistress, written by Andrew Marvell, we came through a line, I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. Now, while elaborating the poem and this particular line, I told you that we have images taken from Bible here. There are 2 phrases used in these sentences where you find a biblical allusion, an image taken from Bible. I would love you 10 years before the flood. Now, which flood are we talking about? We are talking about the Great Flood. We find a reference to the Great Flood in the Old Testament of Bible. And similarly, I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. Now, conversion of the Jews is again a biblical allusion taken from the New Testament of Bible. So this is what allusion is. Allusion means alluding to something. Suppose I am teaching you, and to explain a particular point, I bring in the reference of a particular character from Ramayana or Mahabharata. That means I am alluding to Ramayana or Mahabharata. That will also be an example of allusion. So the first example of allusion, as we discussed just now, so you can write it down. I repeat the sentence once again. And this is taken from To His Coy Mistress, written by Andrew Marvell. I would love you 10 years before the flood, FLOOD, comma, next line. And you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews, JEWS, till the conversion of the Jews. So this is the first example that we have from To His Coy Mistress. The other example is again from a poem that you had in your syllabus. That is Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. And I give you the second example. Please write it down. It may be, we shall touch the happy isles. It may be, we shall touch the happy isles. It may be, we shall touch the happy isle, 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 comma, next line, and see the great Achilles, and see, SEE, and see the great Achilles, ACHILLLES, and see the great Achilles. Now, whom are we alluding to? We are alluding to Achilles. Who is Achilles, and where did we find a reference to Achilles? In our semester 1, while we were going through with Iliad, if you remember. Achilles was a brave Grecian warrior. Okay, so that means I am alluding. I am using a figure of speech that is called allusion. Okay, so this is what allusion is all about. Now we move on to our next figure of speech. Okay, our next figure of speech for today is oxymoron. The next figure of speech that we will be doing today is oxymoron. 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 Now first let us write down the definition of what oxymoron is all about. Okay. Oxymoron means where WHERE, where two contradictory words, where two TWO, where two contradictory, where two contradictory words are juxtaposed, contradictory words are juxtaposed, JUXTAPOSED. Now juxtaposed means combined. Juxtaposed means combined. Where two contradictory words are juxtaposed for striking effect. For striking, STRIKING. For striking effect, EFFECT. For striking effect. Now this is the definition of oxymoron. To give you an example of oxymoron, oxymoron is again one of the easiest figure of speech. And the sentence that I will provide for the explanation of this figure of speech is very related, very relatable to all of us in fact. The sentence goes like this. He or she, he or she. Now I am giving equality status to both he and she. So he slash she was regularly irregular to college. He slash she was regularly irregular to college. Now that you have written down the sentence, the thing that you find the most peculiar about this particular sentence is you will find two opposite words placed side by side. Regularly, irregular. So what is oxymoron? Oxymoron means two opposite words or contradictory words. Opposite, the synonymous of opposite is also contradiction, contradictory. Okay? So two opposites or contradictory words are placed side by side. So that becomes an example of oxymoron. Now to give you another example from Paradise Lost, Book 1. If you remember, I think these are the texts that you have gone through, so it becomes quite easy to relate these figures of speech with those examples for a better understanding of these figures of speech. If you remember, while describing hell in Paradise Lost, we came across a phrase called darkness visible. In our description of hell, we came upon this particular phrase called darkness visible. Now, the question naturally arises, if hell is considered to be dark, then how is visibility possible? And if it is visible, then the question arises, is there darkness? Is it really dark in hell? Because we can see it's visible. So two opposite words, darkness, visible, are placed side by side. So that becomes an example of oxymoron. To give you another example, life is bittersweet. Life is bitter, B-I-T-T-E-R. B-I-T-T-E-R. Life is bittersweet. Okay, so this is again an example of oxymoron because two opposite words, bitter and sweet, are placed side by side. So this is also an example of oxymoron. So this is the second figure of speech. Now the third figure of speech for today will be antithesis, because after doing oxymoron, we need to do antithesis side by side, because antithesis is the younger brother of oxymoron. Not literally, but the sense matches actually. So this is the reason why after oxymoron I move to antithesis. Now remember the definition of oxymoron clearly. Oxymoron means two opposite ideas, two opposite words were placed side by side. Pardon me. Two opposite words were placed side by side in oxymoron. But in the case of antithesis, the spelling is A-N-T-I, antithesis, T-H-E-S-I-S, A-N-T-I, antithesis, T-H-E-S-I-S, antithesis. Now, anti means opposite, and thesis means idea. Anti means opposite, and thesis means idea. So how is antithesis different from oxymoron? Oxymoron means two opposite words were placed side by side. Antithesis means two opposite ideas are placed side by side. So first we will write down the definition of antithesis. Okay, write it down. Antithesis is a figure of speech. Antithesis is a figure of speech in which contrasted words or ideas are placed together placed, P-L-A-C-E-D, are placed together in a balanced form, in a balanced form, for the sake of emphasis, for the sake, S-A-K-E, for the sake of emphasis, E-M-P-H-A-S-I-S, for the sake of emphasis. Now, to give you an example, united we stand, comma, divided we fall. United we stand, comma, divided we fall. Now, if you notice clearly, the first section before the comma, one idea has been represented. United we stand. And after the comma, we have an opposite idea placed. What is the opposite of united? It is divided. So after comma, what do we have? We have divided we fall. United we stand. This is the first idea, comma. And the second idea is divided we fall. So what is antithesis? Antithesis means two opposite ideas are placed side by side. Okay. To give you another example, I saved him. I saved him. S-A-V-E-D. I saved him. I saved him, comma. She killed him. I saved him, comma. She killed him. So what are the two opposite ideas? I saved him. What is the opposite of save? Kill. She killed him is an example of antithesis. So this was the third figure of speech, I suppose. This was the third figure of speech, yes. Now the next and the fourth figure of speech for today is epigram. Epigram. E-P-I-G-R-A-M. Epigram. E-P-I-G-R-A-M. Epigram. Now again, as our custom is and as tradition demands, we need to go through the definition of this particular figure of speech. So write it down. There is a shocking contradiction. There is a shocking contradiction in the apparent meaning, apparent, A-P-P-A-R-E-N-T, in the apparent meaning of an expression, apparent meaning of an expression or statement, apparent meaning of an expression or statement, comma, but there is an underlying significance. But there is an underlying significance. Okay, so this is the definition of epigram. Now again, I suppose the definition is not clear to you. It shouldn't be actually. It has not been elaborated as of now. So let us deal with examples. The first example. The child is the father of man. The child is the father of man. Now, what is epigram? Epigram means a sentence which might appear very shocking and contradictory or paradoxical, but which will convey or which will have a deep underlying meaning to it. So when we go through this particular sentence called "the child is the father of man," Now, since we talk of biology, biologically, it is not possible. How can a child be a father of man? Okay, so it shocks us. We are shocked by this particular statement. It does not make sense. How can a child be a father of man? And remember, this particular line is taken from a very famous poem that we read in class 6 or 7, most probably. The name of the poem was Rainbow, written by William Wordsworth. It was actually a sonnet, and as far as I remember, the poem starts with, "My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So was it when my life began, so be it as I am a grown up man." The child is the father of man was the second last sentence of this particular poem, The Rainbow, written by William Wordsworth. Now, it initially shocks us. How can a child be the father of man? But the sentence has a deep meaning to it. What is that deep meaning? The meaning is that this particular child of today, will be the maker of future generation, will be the maker of future generation. And in this sense, the child is the father of man. This child will grow up to be the future of a new generation. The child is the father of man. To give you another example, usually what happens is whenever we score quite low in our semester exams, the kind of logic that teachers usually give to their students is, remember, this is a piece of advice given by each and every teacher to his or her student. The advice is, remember, and in a very serious tone, remember, failure is a pillar of success. Okay. This is a kind of advice which has been received by each and every student in his lifetime. Once to at least he or she has received this advice. Failure is a pillar of success. Okay. Now, failure is a pillar of success. We have been listening to this particular advice from our teachers from time immemorial. But we never knew that this particular sentence is also an example of epigram. Because when for the first time, I don't exactly know how I reacted when one of my teachers told me that failure is a pillar of success, because I was one of those who always failed and who had a lot of pillars built upon them. So I don't know what exactly meant. For the first time when I heard this particular sentence, that failure is the pillar of success, initially I was shocked. Here I was having a mark sheet and a score of 0.6 out of 25 in mathematics, and this teacher of mine was giving me an advice that failure is a pillar of success. I wanted to shout, I wanted to cry out loud to my teacher and tell him, kindly, if you can come to my house and give this piece of advice to my parents, it would be far better for them to understand this piece of advice than I would, because I was at not that particular age at that point in time to understand the kind of underlying meaning this sentence actually carried. Failure is a pillar of success. It was only when we grew up we came to know how can failure be a pillar of success. And you people must be knowing now onwards how failure is a pillar of success, because without failures, you can never understand what success is. Okay, so the two sentences that I gave you, the first one was, the child is the father of man, and the second one was, failure is a pillar of success. Be very careful when you go through these sentences, and you will find that whenever you come across epigram, a question arises in your mind. How? How is that question? How can failure be a pillar of success? How can a child be a father of man? So a question arises in your mind, and when a question arises in your mind, that's the point you need to write down in your answer sheet that this is an example of epigram. Okay, so this is the fourth figure of speech that we did today. Now, the last for today is hyperbole. Hyperbole, Hyperbole. 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 Okay. Now, what is hyperbole? Acha, hyperbole is also known as exaggeration. So, this is a figure of speech that we are quite familiar with. We prefer masala dosa rather than simple dosa. So, hyperbole is that masala dosa. Jokes apart. Hyperbole is also known as exaggeration. 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 Now, what is hyperbole? Again, following our tradition, we need to write down the definition. Hyperbole consists in magnifying a thing, magnifying a thing, magnifying a thing, or idea, magnifying a thing or idea beyond its natural bound, beyond its natural bound. And I think this is one figure of speech you understand from the very definition, or you knew the this part of definition quite beforehand, and you know what hyperbole means. So hyperbole also stands for exaggeration, which means a kind of magnifying things. Things are simple, but we make them complex. They seem simple, but we make them quite complex. Particularly, to give you a very simple example of one of the incidents I think we all have gone through, it was back in the year 2016, I remember. There are lots of news channels who run 24/7. Sometimes I confuse those channels to be entertainment channels, or channels. I compare those news channels to being channels like Zoom and other those channels. They deal with fake news, and one of the exaggerated news that we received in 2016, when, if you remember, the 2000 currency notes were about to come into the market, and there were some news channels talking about chips being loaded onto the 2000 currency notes, and those GPS chips would actually tell us about the black money storage, or people who are hoarding black money. So that was supposed to be the function of the 2000 currency notes, and this was a kind of a news report done by a very popular TV news anchor once upon a time in 2016. So that is what exaggeration is, that is what hyperbole is. And when we received that 2000 currency note with the expectation that we would find a GPS chip on that particular thing, I thought that would be better if I could have that chip in my mobile phone. But unfortunately, I didn't receive that chip from 2000 currency notes. And in fact, the notes that we received was like churan ka paper kind of a color on it, pink and whatnot. Let it go. So hyperbole means exaggerating things to a particular magnitude. Okay. Now hyperbole is found in Macbeth. In any of the plays you go through of Shakespeare, you will find lots of exaggerations used. I will give you just one example of this particular thing because it's a very common figure of speech. Write down the sentence, the example from hyperbole. All the perfumes of Arabia, all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten, SWEETEN, will not sweeten this little hand of mine, will not sweeten this little hand of mine. Okay, all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand of mine. Obviously, this line is taken from Macbeth, written by William Shakespeare, and the scene is Act 5, Scene 1, the sleepwalking scene. These lines are spoken by Lady Macbeth. Now, all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand of mine. Lady Macbeth was in a kind of a sleepwalking trance when she says this line. She believes that all the perfumes of Arabian lands will not wash the smell of blood from her hand, and this is impossible. Impossible. It won't happen actually. Okay. So this is what hyperbole or exaggeration is. I suppose the 5 figures of speech that we dealt to today are clear to you. I will give you exercises after the completion of 22 around 22 figures of speech. When we complete those 22 figures of speech, we'll give you certain assignments on figures of speech. This is supposed to be the third class on figure of speech, so we can say that we have completed 15 figures of speech as of now. So with this, I suppose with this I bid you goodbye. And before bidding you goodbye, I would like to again advise you. This is the kind of thing that teachers do, and I would also like to do. Stay at home, be safe. Doing nothing is the new norm. So if you want to be a hero or a heroine, do nothing, stay at home, wear a mask, because you need to go through that 5-star commercial that regularly plays on TV channels, where this guy standing against a lamppost eating his 5-star does not help the old woman pick up her stick. And at last, the old woman gets up from the seat and picks the stick up, and suddenly a certain portion of the building crashes onto her seat. The old woman looks up to that boy and thanks him for not doing anything. So that guy with the 5-star becomes a hero for not doing anything. So that is what the corona environment demands of us. So do nothing, be safe, be a hero, be a heroine, wear a mask. And while I'm making this video, it is not good morning actually. It's around 1 a.m. early morning, I suppose. So bidding you good morning and good night at once altogether. Thank you. Bye.